Tonight, America's talking about a new phrase in our national vocabulary, stand your ground. But before you bring it up at the dinner table, we want to make sure you know exactly what it means and how that law works. I want to welcome in our panel Kelly Carter, entertainment journalist here in Atlanta, also in Los Angeles, criminal defense attorney Darren Kavanaugh, and in D.C., the editor of Always A-List, Jawn Murray. Now, before we open the floor to the panel, I want to take a closer look at stand your ground laws. More than 30 states have some form of stand your ground in place. So how is the law being used and who benefits most from it? Well, take a look at this info from the Tampa Bay Times. When stand your ground is used in Florida, 68% of all defendants go free. 66% of black defendants go free, 61% of white defendants go free, and 16% of all defendants are convicted in a jury trial. Because remember, stand your ground applies to immunity. You're immune from trial. If you don't get it, you go to trial, and then you have that verdict. Now, what happens across the United States to shootings that are ruled justifiable? Because look at this, because this is what applies to the Zimmerman case. Remember, he didn't assert stand your ground. He claimed justifiable homicide. In justifiable cases, it's justifiable in just a little bit more than 1% of all cases. A shooting is ruled justifiable 11% of the time when the shooter and the victim are both white. When the shooter and the victim are both black, the shooting is found to be justifiable 8% of the time. Now look at this. When the shooter is white and the victim is black, the shooting is found to be justifiable 34% of the time. And the reverse, shooter black, victim white, shooting is found to be justified just 3% of the time. So I got to bring back our panel and ask the question, should states keep stand your ground laws? Darren, what do you think?
Well, the idea behind stand your ground laws, and let's make sure everybody is talking about the same thing. In most states, you have what's called the castle doctrine, which basically says you can use deadly force when somebody is invading your castle, meaning your home, and you can protect yourself in your home. But when you're out in public, generally you have a duty to retreat. What these stand your ground laws mean is that you no longer have that duty, that you can use deadly force anywhere you've got a legal right to be. So fundamentally, whether the stand your ground laws should be kept or eradicated is not a race issue, although we see from the numbers that there are some significant discrepancies in the application. But it's really a function of how you view your rights to use deadly force, whether you think as a policy standpoint, somebody should have the obligation to retreat from some kind of altercation.
Okay, Kelly Carter, let me get your quick thought.
No, I think before this case, no one had ever, a lot of people hadn't heard of stand your ground, and we feel like, you know, people are going to bring in guns to fist fights, so no.
Okay, there you go. Jawn Murray, I want you to hold on because I got another part to bring you up on. Let's move to the magazine cover that's got everybody talking on Facebook and Twitter. You got to see this. Accused Boston Marathon bomber Jawn Tsarnaev on the cover of Rolling Stone. Now, the magazine defends this choice, saying that the fact that Jawn Tsarnaev is young and in the same age group as many of our readers, this is a quote from them, makes it all the more important for us to examine the complexities of this issue and gain a more complete understanding of how a tragedy like this happens. So CVS and Walgreens are already refusing to sell this issue of Rolling Stone. So let's bring the panel back on this one. And Jawn, I'm going to let you have the floor here. Tell me your thoughts on this one.
I'm outraged by this. I mean, clearly, when you glamorize a terrorist like this, you open up Pandora's box for every other wannabe copycat terrorist out there to want to go out in a very notorious and infamous fashion. These guys are wackadoos, and you don't want to celebrate that. Put photos on covers of magazines where they look like the guy's door. I mean, what are we going to do next? Put George Zimmerman on the cover of Ebony magazine? We've got to be careful about sensationalizing these stories and trying to just generate outrage and response. You know, the magazine business is already hurting. Rolling Stone cannot take a hit like this. This was not a good idea on their part.
All right, and Kelly Carter, the mayor of Boston, Thomas Menino, came out and said, why not put the survivors on the cover? And then he ends by saying the survivors of the Boston attacks deserve Rolling Stone cover stories, though I no longer feel that Rolling Stone deserves them. What do you think?
You know, I think that Rolling Stone is no stranger to controversial covers. I mean, they've had Charles Manson on their cover before, and they come from, you know, a place where they don't shy away from doing stories that aren't music or entertainment based. So this is, you know, business as usual for Rolling Stone, and they don't look at it as them, you know, glamorizing a terrorist. They look at it as kind of gaining insight on why a good kid goes bad.
Okay, interesting. Different opinions. That's why we got all three of you here. Darren, Kelly, Jawn, thank you.
Thank you.
And folks, by the way, this isn't Rolling Stone's first controversial cover like Kelly was talking about. For a look at some of the more provocative covers they've had, go to HLNTV.com.